All right, we're here in the Z06 going on a little test drive. It's got a big V8, 6-speed manual transmission, front and rear double wishbone suspension, lots of aluminum suspension bits under there. If you look underneath the car, it's completely flat all the way through. Lots of really neat things on this car. You may also know that the engine, the third generation Chevy small block, is a pushrod engine. Often criticized, but the criticism is unwarranted because this is one of the most common hot rodding platforms that you see in the US, and that's because it's good. So the reputation of this engine speaks for itself. You don't even need to argue with the people who complain about that. It's cheap to make power and reliable. It's great. So anyways, this is the pinnacle of that. This is the Z06. Get one of these, under $15,000 if you shop around, but it's gonna have some problems. This one had a few problems with it that I had to fix, and the guy, when I bought it, I think he just erased the code so that I wouldn't know that it had any problems. But I fix up my car, so that's fine. The brakes are worn out, so I replaced all the brakes, all the pads. That was less than $300, and when you compare that to other sports cars today, like for example my BMW M3, one brake rotor on that car cost $300. When all these reviewers say this is the best bang for the buck, they're implying that this car is cheap, which it isn't. It's really a nice car from a tuning standpoint. For those of us who go to the track, this is an awesome platform to work with, and it is not simply bang for the buck, it is undervalued. This car should be selling for a lot more money than it is. The German cars can't compare to this, they just don't. End of story, there's no argument. Some neat things that you see on this car when you get underneath it are the transverse leaf springs, and that brings up some controversy. You get underneath it, you see that they put brake ducts for the front and the rear brakes. And so I'm essentially at the racetrack running street pads, which would not work on any other car, but this car makes it work. And as far as power goes, it's more power than I want. I'm happy driving a Miata these days. I don't really care about having the fastest car. And so it doesn't really impress me, but I enjoy it. I enjoy going to the track, being able to step on the gas. And in this car, it adds a new dimension. Like when you get in a Viper or a Z06, you go to the racetrack, you step on the gas, and it's like putting the brakes on for everyone else. You can literally just pass them. The powertrain is reliable. The parts are cheap. Oftentimes, you can pick these cars up for nothing because they'll have a problem with them. Like, for example, my Camaro that I bought back, when I was a lot younger, was making a heavy knocking sound, and I worked on these engines, so I knew that it was just a $7 pushrod. So I got that car for a few $1,000, and I fixed it for $7. And that's the same thing with the Z06. You can have all these little problems, and you can fix them for nothing, and you have just a fantastic car. One of the problems I had was the EBCM, the electronic brake control module, was out. So I pulled that out, I resoldered some points on the PCB, put it back in, and it works fine. And other problems, I had an O2 code I fixed. Fuel gauge, there's a common problem with this car where the fuel gauge will just suddenly go to 0 and your fuel reading won't work at all. And you fix that by putting Techron additive in the gas tank, and that's it. The one thing I really didn't like about the car was the factory shift knob. This guy is very spongy, and so you can't really feel what's going on with the shifter. So I put a Hurst shifter ball on here, made a big improvement. I put a new transmission fluid in the back because the transmission is in the back in this car, and it's called the transaxle, of course, and that made the shifter feel a lot better. The other things that are great about this car are that it doesn't actually feel like I'm driving a hardcore sports car. Usually when I'm in these sports cars, I'm very uncomfortable, but this, it's very natural to drive it. And it hauls ass. I step on the gas and it just goes. Really a well-rounded car, and the criticisms against it are not warranted at all. I wouldn't even listen to those. And the gas is good, but it can be as bad as you want it to be. If you have a heavy foot like I was having back there, you're gonna suck down the gas. But it does have the option to be fuel efficient. If you cruise on the highway, you can really squeeze out good fuel economy. And you'll get people that try to race you. And you'll get people that think that they're racing you. This car can also be as fast as you want it to be. You can supercharge it, you can do a heads and cam setup on it, and building this engine is stupid simple. There's a single cam, that runs right down the center of the block. Very, very, very simple to get more power out of this engine. But I don't really want more power. I don't really do the straight line racing stuff at all anymore, and so I just spend my time at the track. It's a very good track car, and you can grow into it, make it as fast as you want it to be. I think with just with decent tires, I'd probably have a car that could, run a 2-minute flat lap time around Thunderhill or Buttonwillow, and that's impressive because, with my S2000, that took tons of modifications to get a car that went that fast. It's out of the box, built to go fast. So with this test drive, I just want to reiterate, it's got a lot of expensive things underneath it. It has a titanium exhaust to save weight. For my M3, the titanium exhaust, aftermarket titanium exhaust, costs $8,000. So it's just really neat that they did stuff like that on this car. You have to really appreciate all the engineering that went into this car, because even today, it's still impressive. Pedal placement is great. Everything is great, and the really surprising thing that I found with this car is I can drive it for hundreds of miles, and my back doesn't hurt, and my legs don't fall asleep. A lot of cars I get really uncomfortable on road trips. Let's talk about some other things that are in the car right in front of me before I go away with the road test. We got the radio up here. It's a Bose sound system. It's decent. There's no auxiliary input, but you can wire one in. It has dual climate. One of the things I noticed, if you leave the passenger dual climate in the center, it's supposed to match the driver, but the passenger side blows more than the driver's side, and so the passenger gets uncomfortable. But once I inform the passenger how to control the dual climate, they are very comfortable, and this dual climate works great. Buttons up here, you have a lot of things you can read out on your dash up here. You can read through trouble codes, you can read through ABS codes, you can read through body control module codes. It shows you oil life, trip odometer, all of this great stuff displayed right here on your dash. And the gauge cluster, unlike the Chevy trucks, the gauges are offset at different depths, and so it looks really neat looking at it. And at night, it's illuminated, and you can make out a checkered flag sort of pattern behind the gauges. It's really cool. Sounds kind of lame, but it's actually pretty cool. The heads-up display is another neat feature that we have for driving, and also the visibility is great. So all around, a really great car in itself, and on top of that, a great sports car. So not bad at all, not bad at all. I was lucky to find one with all the stock parts on it, the stock titanium exhaust, the stock wheels, because a lot of people put cheap modifications on them, and you probably don't want to do one of those that hasn't been maintained. Be careful when you're looking at these cars, because a lot of them are not worth what the people are asking. Thank you guys for watching, and enjoy your car.